Hello everyone, and welcome to this quick fire tutorial on how to fly the Zibo. We're going to start off from cold and dark, do a full flight, and return the aircraft to cold and dark on the other side. So after this video, you should know how to switch the 737 NG on, set up a flight, complete the flight, and then switch it back off again. So, you may need to pause this video because I'm going to try and keep it quick and short because I know that people don't like to sit through hours and hours of tutorials. You just want to get to the point. So I'm going to do that. So first thing, you'll see that the aircraft is completely cold and dark. What you'll need to do is go onto your tablet, click on ground services, connect the GPU. Mine's already connected. I'm just going to set the chocks as well. Once you've connected the GPU, you'll see on your overhead we've now got a blue light here to say that ground power is available. So what you do, you click that down to on, and you can see we've got power running through the aircraft now. So next thing, we'll just arm the emergency exit lights, and we'll also switch the battery on just by closing this switch. We need to go up here now to the IRS, turn these both to nav, not to align, turn them straight to nav, and you'll see they'll go to align and align. Okay. Now, if we're doing this properly, what you need to do is switch your nav position lights onto steady. This lets everyone know that there's electricity running through the aircraft now. You can tell that they're on because you've got your navigation lights both on. So that's initially how we've got power into the plane. Now we need to give the plane a reference as to where we are. So we'll go down to the FMC. This is called the FMC. Just clear. It'll probably say nav data out of date. Just clear that away. Click on FMC. I'm going to go to position initialize. You put your reference airport here. We're at Catania, which is Lima, India, Charlie, Charlie. And then you'll see this message telling you to set the IRS position, and it's all blank. So what you need to do, you need to click on next page, select one of the GPSs. They should both read exactly the same. Just line select that and you'll see that information is copied down here. Go back to the previous page and enter it here. And that's basically now we've given the plane a reference to where we are in the world. Next thing you want to do is click on route, and you'll see that your airport is already down here, so we just enter here in origin, and then we put the destination airport up here into destination. Fairly straightforward. If you've got a company route, what you need to do is line select this and your destination, because usually company routes are saved in this format. To get a company route, you can either buy a piece of software, or you can visit onlineflightplanner.org and generate one for free and download it there. So you just put your company route in here. We'll just make up a flight number. We'll put that in there, and we click activate and execute. So because this is just a tutorial, I've turned real world weather off, just to make it easier for myself. However, if you did have real world weather on, you need to take off into the wind. It's flight basic. So what you do, you click on departure and arrival, and you'll see the two airports here that we've already entered. You click on departure for the airport that we're at, and like I said, what you'd do is have a look into your weather, see which way the wind is blowing, and find the runway closely matching to that so that you've got as much of a headwind as you can possibly get. But as I said before, we don't have any wind on, so I can select any runway. Now, what we need to do is select our SID. So I know, because I've already looked at the flight plan, our first waypoint is called Nelda. As you can see, there's two here that refer to Nelda. In most cases, your SID will have a similar name to your first waypoint. If not, you'll have to double check that online somewhere. But usually the case, you'll be able to recognize which one it's going to be. So we're going to go with Nelda 5Y, and again click execute. So now you can see on the routes page we're departing from runway 26 via Neld 5Y to Nelda, then we're going direct to Durka, then from Durka we direct to Gozo. And Gozo is our last waypoint, and once we're up in the air we'll configure the aircraft for arrival. But for now, that's good how it is. Now, before we go on to the performance initialization page, we actually need to configure the aircraft in terms of weight and fuel. So go back to your home page, fuel weight, payload, we'll just make anything up here, we'll put 20 in. Fuel 5.7 is probably it's more than enough. However, I'm just going to drop it down a little bit to 5.5. To actually get the fuel, you enter the number in here, go back, go to ground services, and call the fuel truck. If we switch to the outside view, you'll see that the fuel truck's arrived, and this man here is putting the fuel in for us. You can check down here as well, the fuel is decreasing. So now that we've got our payload and our fuel configured, we can go back to the FMC and we click on the performance initialization page. The good thing with the Zibo is that if you're feeling lazy, you can just line select this. So just select that and it'll give you your gross weight. Reserves, we'll go for 2 tons here. Cost index, because it's Ryanair, we'll go with a cost index of 6, which is the cost index that they use. So as you can see, our IRS is aligned now, meaning we've got our PFD and nav display alive. We'll just cancel the master caution switch, and as you can see, there's our flight plan that we set up earlier. We're taking off from runway 26 to Nelda, to Durka, and then to Gozo, and then from Gozo we will plan our arrival into Malta. But for now, we just leave that alone. So back to the FMC. Because it's a very short flight, we will go with a cruising altitude of 14,000 feet. However, this you can translate this to a much longer flight. If you're, if your flight's lasting an hour or 2 or 3, you'll obviously want to go up to 35, 36, 37,000 feet depending on your weight. But because we're only flying a short distance, we're not going to climb too high. So then we execute, and now the aircraft knows how much it weighs and how much fuel it has, etc, etc. Then we click on N1 limit. For the outside air temperature, which is OAT, we can line select that and it gives it us, it's 15 degrees. Now the N1 limit is it's not so much important in simulation. Real world pilots will derate the aircraft. And derate, I mean that the engines won't produce as much thrust as what they can. This basically just saves wear and tear on the engine. So because we're very, very light, we've hardly got any fuel, I'm going to derate the takeoff to 2. However, the climb, I want us to climb very fast, so I'm going to leave the climb on 1. That makes sense. If he was very heavy, you would take off on 1 as well, because if you've got a very heavy aircraft, you don't want it to derate the engines. But this comes with practice. I'm sure there are charts and guides that give you the actual statistics as to whether to derate enough, but I sort of do this just off knowing how much payload and fuel I've got and how long the runway is. If it's a short runway, again, you don't want to derate. Anyway, we go to the takeoff page. Flaps, we will set at 5 degrees. And the center of gravity, we can line select that, which gives us our trim. It's very important. The V1, VR and V2 speeds are obviously, V1 is the point of no return, VR is the point we start rotating the aircraft, and V2 is the speed that the aircraft should climb out at. So we line select all of those to confirm them, and then we're pretty much done. We're done with this now. That's the hard bit done. And it's not, what did it take, 2 minutes? So this bit's done. We move on to the autopilot panel here. Now we need to input some of the information here into here. So for example, our speed needs to be the V2 speed. So we set this to 148. Heading we can leave alone. Ideally you want to set it to the runway heading. In case something goes wrong, you would just climb out runway heading. So for now we'll just leave it like that, and when we're on the runway we can set it again. Altitude, if we had ATC they would give us an initial altitude, and then we would request as we fly for higher altitudes, but because there's no ATC we're just going to go straight to 14,000 unobstructed. So this information is input here. We need to turn the flight directors on both sides. The auto throttle, we need to arm that. And we can also turn on vertical navigation and lateral navigation. These 2 buttons are basically telling the autopilot panel to follow the instructions that we've put into the computer. It'll make sense, don't worry. So that's pretty much the initial setup done. Now we can begin to start the engines. So we'll go up to the overhead panel, sorry, and we'll work from the left down, left down, left down. I'm not sure if that's entirely correct. Maybe you go left down and then back up again, but I do know that you sweep across the auto panel, you're going down. So basically we're going to try and get rid of the orange lights. These 2 won't disappear until we've got the engine switched on. However, your damper, we need to switch this on. You can only switch this on once the IRS is aligned. We can turn on the fuel pumps. If we had fuel in the center tank, we would also turn on the center tank fuel pumps, but we only have fuel in the wing tanks, so we will only turn these on. Guys, I'm just going to say as well, just for the record, before anyone bites my head off, this might not be by the book, but this will get your flying and landed and following a flight path, etc, etc. If you want to get more technical, then by all means please have a look at some other YouTubers. For example, Flight Deck to Sim is a real 737 captain. You can't go wrong listening to this guy. A very knowledgeable person. What we're going to do now, we're going to start the APU, and for those of you that don't know what an APU is, it's a small jet engine in the back here, and we use this to start the main engines basically. As you can see, the EGT is rising. We'll know when the APU is delivering us power because this blue light here will turn on. Anyway, we're carrying on with the overhead. We can turn the window heat switches on now. The probe heat switches, technically we don't turn them on until we've got the beacon light on. Switch on these two electric switches here. As you can see, the APU is now providing us power, so we can take power from the APU and we can disconnect the ground power now. The plane is powering itself, we don't need anything from the ground. Still on the autopilot, and we come to the air conditioning and pack section. Now this is very, very important. Well, again, not so much in simulation. In real life, it's extremely important. This is what keeps everyone alive when flying at altitude. So you need to set your flight altitude here and the elevation of the airport that you're arriving at here. So obviously we're cruising at 14,000. So we set that here, and the elevation of Malta is around, I think it's around 260, but you do it to the closest 10. So if, for example, it was 280, then we would set this to 300. That makes sense. Okay, so that's pretty much everything. Ready to go. We can switch the anti-collision light, which is also known as the beacon light, before engines start. As you can see, it's come on here. Now we can plan the pushback. This is a great little free add-on, by the way, if you're not aware of it. It's called Better Pushback. Really
Alright,
like
Captain, got the directions. Let me know through the menu when you're ready.
Yes, sir. So, we'll call this guy. I'm sure I told GPUs. And we can remove the chocks. So what we'll do, we will call the pushback truck.
Great news, Captain. Your tow's coming.
That's great. Right. There's not much to do at the minute. We just gotta wait for this guy to arrive. As he goes through this, whatever this is. There he goes. Oh, just a quick thing while we wait. Your TCAS is just here. So we'll just set a random
Alright,
TCAS.
looks like the doors and hatches are closed and we're ready to connect.
This is to say that we're being hijacked, so let's not do that one. We'll just go with 7-3 blah blah blah. There we go, and switch this all the way around to the right, and you can see that message has disappeared. What did he say? Connecting? Yeah, we're connecting. See the plane being lifted into the air now.
Welcome aboard, Captain. Tow's connected, bypass pins inserted. Go ahead and kill the parking brake when you're ready to go.
So we kill the parking brake. Now,
Here comes the pushback. Light them up.
now we can start the engines. So, to start the engines we need the packs, left and right pack in the off position. We need the isolation switch to open. And we need the engine bleeds off, the APU bleed on. So That's how it should look like. These two off, this on, this open, packs off. Once we have that configured, this is the engine start switch here. We start with number 2. We'll flick this over to ground. Or in fact, yeah, flick this over to ground. Now, we need to keep an eye on the N2. Once this reaches 25%, we'll dump the fuel in. There we go. As you can see, it'll come alive now. Don't worry about these yellow error messages. Once this switch clicks back into the automatic position, we can do the same for number 1. There we go. And put some fuel in there.
Just about done here. Go ahead and set your parking brake.
So we'll set the parking brake again so you can disconnect.
And we're disconnecting the tow. Give me just a moment.
So the 2 engines are now started and they're stable, both giving similar readouts, which is good. So now with the engine started, it's actually providing electricity, so we can turn the APU off. But before we do that, we need to transfer the bus. So switch this down and this down. Now we've taken the power from the engines and not the APU, so we can go ahead and turn the APU off. And a very, very important step now is we need to turn the air conditioning back on, otherwise everyone will die. So we switch the APU bleed off, engine
And we're
bleeds on.
disconnected. Signal and pin on the left. Take it easy and have a safe flight.
Isolation switch to automatic, packs automatic, and you'll hear the air conditioning has come back on now, so we're getting oxygen back into the cabin, especially once we get above the height that it gets quite difficult to breathe. Now that the engines are started, we can also turn on the probe heat switches, and as you can see, the overhead is nice and clean. There are no orange warning lights. The only orange we have here, which should be orange. Now we can do the after start checklist, which is we set the flaps to 5, which takes 3 clicks. You can check it up here, 1, 2 and 5. We can switch the auto brake to rejected takeoff, and we can also now set our trim to what it says here, which is 4.88. As you can see, the space between each, so we've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, so it's a very, very small gap. So as long as you're within the ballpark range, you don't have to be deadly accurate with this. So that's pretty much it. Engines are started, the plane's ready to go. We'll switch the taxi light on. If you want to be technical, you'd also do a flight control test here, making sure everything's working. There you go, that's done nice and quickly. And we can begin our taxi towards the runway. So, we'll be there in no time. going to taxi a little bit faster because I said I want to keep this video as short as possible, really. Just pull back on that taxi speed a little bit. So, yeah, in case you're wondering, we're in Catania, which is in Sicily. That is the active volcano of Mount Etna. And we're flying to the Mediterranean island of Malta. Which is a very short flight. And it's very pretty as well. So, get to the bottom here. We're going to pretend that we've got clearance to take off, so we switch our landing lights on, runway turn off lights, and our wing lights. Because it's getting dark as well, we can switch the logo light on. Oh yeah, we can also switch these to continuous. This is in case we get an engine failure. The engine spins continuously. It means we can have a better chance of reigniting the engine. So we've got clearance from ATC. They're saying we're all good to go. What we'll do, we'll taxi onto the runway now. Set the view. So to take off, to do it properly, we push the engines to 50%. Make sure that they're both rising together. You can see they're both at 50. Now we select the N1 switch, and we're going. Positive rate, landing gear up, and we need to pitch to around 15 degrees. And basically what we're looking to do now is keep this little white circle in the middle of the pink cross.
1000.
So you'll hear the 1000 call. We can also start retracting the flaps now, so we'll go with flaps 2, and then once we cross over this little marker for flaps 1, we will switch it down to flaps 1, etc. So we'll go with flaps 1, pitch the nose down a little bit. Go with flaps up. What we can do now is switch on the autopilot, which is up here. We'll switch that on. We can let go of the yoke, and the plane will now fly itself. And there we go. The plane will now follow the flight plan. Here is where you can relax, enjoy the views from outside, do whatever you like basically. So I'll just do a quick after takeoff checklist. So flaps are retracted. You can turn the taxi light off because it's actually on the gear of the wheel, which is now in the wheel well, so that's kind of useless. So we can switch that off. We can switch the engines back to automatic, and we can turn the auto brake off, and the gear switch, we can switch that down to off. And once we pass 10,000 feet, we will switch all of the landing lights off, the runway turning lights off, and the wing lights off. Oh, one thing I forgot to do. As we entered the runway, we should have switched this up here to strobe and steady. My bad. So just remember to do that. As I switched all the landing lights off, I said switch this up. As you can see now, the plane's banking itself. Above the transitional altitude, you'll get a yellow warning down here telling you to switch your barometric meter to standard. Let's have a look at some of the views from the passenger cabin. Very nice. Just approaching 10,000 now. You'll see basically below 10,000 feet there's a speed limit of 250 knots. However, once you've passed 10,000 feet you can fly faster than that. Most modern aircraft come obviously knowing this, and once you set up the flight it will automatically stop you from flying faster than that. Anyway, we can now retract the landing lights, the runway turn off lights, and the wing lights, and the logo light. We have a look outside, and now we're ready just to start cruising along south towards the island of Malta. I'm going to split this video down, so the next time you hear from me will be when I begin to set the plane up for the arrival. For you it's going to be pretty instant, however for me I'll see you in a couple of minutes. So we're getting close to the point now where we need to begin our descent. However, we've not actually planned our descent yet. You can see we're roughly around 40 nautical miles from Gozo, which is our last waypoint. So in order to set up the arrival, we need to go back to the departure and arrivals page, click on arrivals for our arrival airport, and again with takeoff you need to check the weather because you want to land into the wind. You don't want to land with a tailwind. You can land with a tailwind as long as it's very low, you know, a couple of knots, but ideally we want to land into the wind. However, we don't have any wind set, so I can select any one of these. I'm going to show you how to do an ILS approach. So what we do, we select ILS 13, and it's asking us what we would like to. We're just going to select ILS 13 and execute. So we're very, very close to top of descent now, so we need to set the altitude to, you're going to be okay if you set the altitude to around 2,500. That's going to work for most ILS's approach. I recommend a more comprehensive tutorial as to how to get this altitude to, you know, your descent altitude. However, we're going to be okay with this. So we're just going to quickly check that it all makes. As you can see, the aircraft will begin to descend itself once we pass the top of descent marker, and you can check with the pink diamond here and here. This will sort of drag the aircraft down. That's how I picture it anyway in my mind. We're just going to check that this bit looks okay. To do that, we can click on plan. We go to the legs page. As you can see, we've got a discontinuity. So we click on step and step again, and we can zoom in. So as you can see, from Gozo to Nedox there's a gap. So all we do, select Nedox and enter it here. We join them up. You can see now the white marker has joined these two up. Click execute, and now we've got a flight path that links up all the way down to the runway. Now, as you descend, you just want to keep an eye on your speed, because depending on the winds, the aircraft can have a tendency to pick up speed or even slow speed. If it's slow speeds, the auto throttle will automatically kick in and speed you back up. However, if you start picking up speed, what you have to do is manually pull on the brake, and as you can see now, the speed is decreasing. However, we don't need that. So, same again, as we cross 10,000 feet, we need to switch our landing lights back on again and make sure that we're below 250 knots. So we'll just do that now. Switch the landing lights on, runway turning lights on, taxi lights on, the logo and the wing. Switch to the outside view. As you can see, everything's nicely lit up. So the aircraft itself is slowed down to 240. And now we just keep an eye on things as we get towards the runway. Now, we've selected an ILS approach, so what we need to do is click on the init reference page. As you can see here, we've got ILS 13, and it comes with a frequency 109.70. What we need to do, we enter that here. We enter it here. 109.70, and we transfer that over to the active side. This is standby, this is active. Do that again, same thing again for the co-pilot. So now we've both got 109.70 in the active column. Also, it comes with a course, 132 degrees. We need to enter this again on both sides. 132 and 132. Alright, and that's basically how you set up an ILS approach. Dead simple. As we get closer down here, you see this white dotted line here. That's the beginning of the localizer. So once we get around this section, we're going to switch on the localizer switch, but I'll explain that as we get to it. So this is the island of Gozo, and that's the island of Malta. It's currently where I'm living. Really nice, beautiful place. I flew in and out of here many times on Flight Simulator and in real life. although I've not been at the controls in real life. But basically, I know the airport quite well. So we've just dropped below the transition altitude. I'm not sure why it was at 7,000. It's usually at 5,000. However, again, we need to switch this from standard to the local, what's the word I'm looking for? The local barrel pressure. To do that, to find that information, you can either find it through here on your maps, click on the airport, if it works, and it will tell you here, altimeter 2992, and that's what we've got set here. So we're just approaching the island of Gozo. You can already see the runway. We'll zoom into the map a bit more. As well, what we need to do on this approach reference page, we need to select our landing speed. We're going to go with full flaps of 40, so click it once and click it again. This will move down here, and it'll also give you a reference over here. So as we begin to approach the runway, the aircraft will begin to slow down. As it slows down, we will start extending our flaps all the way down to 40. Now we can also set the auto brake. Malta's got an extremely long runway, and because we're not very heavy, we can go with auto brake 1. Auto brake max is basically used in an emergency. 3 is very rarely used also. 1 and 2 are the main auto brakes used. Again, if you want to be sort of realistic with this, companies, for example airlines, they don't want to wear and tear the parts too much, so when possible they'll sort of pull back on everything, whether that be takeoff thrust or braking power, etc. So we're going to begin our turn towards the airport now. As you can see, the plane wants to be at 210 knots, but we're not slowing down, so I'm just going to help it slow down a little bit. Pull the speed brake out. And once we get close to the speed reference, we'll set the auto brake back.
1,000 to go.
Okay, so we're very close to the localizer now. What we can do, switch on the VOR lock switch. As you can see, this pink diamond is going to move across, and once it gets close to the center, it's going to capture the localizer. There we go. You see that message change? It means we're on the localizer now. The plane is continuing to slow down. I don't know why, but now it's thrusting back up.
1,000 to go.
So let's configure the actual plane for landing. The speed brake, we want them to deploy when our wheels touch the ground, so what we do, we select it into the armed position, and it's just a small click. There we go, and you can see it here, it's armed. So as you can see, we're making our way towards the runway. And now we're just waiting for the ILS to start sweeping down. You can see it's changed colour. What we do now, we select the approach switch, which is just directly below the VOR lock switch. As you can see, we've got the GS there for glide slope. You can lower the landing gear, and we can also start putting our flaps down. We set the speed reference to our reference speed, which is 142 knots from what we selected previously. And as the plane slows down, as I said before, we're just going to increase the flaps as we go. The more flaps you increase, the more drag is you're creating, so we should start slowing down a lot more. I live just over here somewhere. Flaps 5. Now it should really start causing some drag. Yeah, there we go. As we get closer to the reference speed, we can start dumping the flaps out. We've got flaps full now, so that's all the flaps done. That's basically it. As you can see, the plane is following the glide slope down towards the runway. If this is a category 3 ILS, what you can do is switch on the other autopilot usually, and that will set the plane up for a category 3, which means that it actually flares itself. But where's the fun in that? So you want to disconnect at around 500. Leave the auto throttle on. A lot of people like to take the auto throttle off as well at this time, but it just gives you a lot more headache. So we approach the runway. At around 50 feet, we're going to disconnect the auto throttle. And retard the throttles all the way back. Flare the plane. And we'll activate the reverse thrust. At 80 knots you can take the reverse thrust off, and we're basically just going to let the plane roll out. Take the auto brake off.
Thank you for flying Ryanair. Last year, over 90% of our flights arrived on time.
As
We
we head
hope you
to
enjoyed
the
yours, and we
runway
look
turn-off
forward to
point.
welcoming you on board again soon. Ryanair. Low fares, made simple.
Yeah. So, as you come off the runway, we want to turn the landing lights off. Runway turning lights off, we'll leave the taxi lights on. We switch the wing lights off, and we turn our strobe lights off, but we want our navigation lights still on, so we switch them down to steady. And we also switch the APU back on. Retract all the flaps, pull the speed brake back in, your auto brake off. Just cancel this little red message. Just have a quick look outside. And that's basically it, guys. I'll show you how to switch it off, and then you'll know how to fly the Zibo. And as I said before, this will translate to any length of flight. All you have to do is adjust how much fuel you're going to need, and also your flight level, so you wouldn't cruise for thousands of miles at 14,000 feet. You'd obviously climb higher. As you fly the aircraft more, you're going to learn, get a feel of what the aircraft can do, how high it's going to be able to cruise, etc. So we're just going to go to this gate here, it's right in front of us. Whoa, landing gears and nose gear, sorry, is acting a bit weird. There we go. I'm just going to have to guesstimate whereabouts I am. There we go, that'll do. Parking brake on. Let's just switch the taxi light off so we don't blind this guy. Before you switch the engines off, we're going to switch it back to APU power, and now we can kill the engines by taking the turning the fuel switch off. So the engines are off. Obviously now in real life you'd have the ground crew, the stairs for example, coming attaching to the aircraft, and the baggage unloaders. What they would also do is connect your GPU and set the chocks. So once they'd confirm that the GPU's connect, you'd switch it back over to ground power, and we can turn the APU off. Okay, let's fast forward and imagine that everyone's off the plane and all the bags are off, and we want to switch the plane completely off again. What we need to do is just do everything in reverse. So we'll switch the turn the IRS off, go damper off, window heat switches off, probe heat switches off, these two electric switches off. We want this to off, logo light off, anti-collision light off, fuel pump switches off. If you put your TCAS on, we'll switch that off. The battery will switch off. Once we disconnect the ground power, we have no more power, and it's back to cold and dark. And that's basically it. That's a full flight in the Zibo mod. Oh, I went too far off. Should have just rolled a little bit further. But yeah, that's how you do a full flight in the Zibo. Not difficult. Cheers for watching, guys. Hope it's helped you. At least get the basics of it. You know, if you want to delve deeper, check out some more comprehensive tutorials. But bye for now.